Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world that smells faintly of roasted chestnuts, muddy boots, and something unidentifiable bubbling in a distant pot. The sun's setting behind crooked timbered rooftops, casting gold over cobbled streets, where shadows grow long and the echoes of a lute string vibrate through the air. You're standing in the middle of a bustling medieval town square, not as a noble, not even as a merchant, but as someone about to glimpse the chaotic, risky, and oddly glamorous underworld of medieval street performers. And fair warning, you probably won't survive this without tripping over a juggler being cursed by a fire breather's ex-wife or catching fleas from a dancing bear. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing the little map we all make together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for taut soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking slowly now, boots clicking against slick cobblestone. The marketplace is still thrumming from the day's commerce, but it's evening now, and that's when the real show begins. Not the traders hawking fish or herbs or stiff wool tunics. No, now it's the performer's turn to claim the space, the puppeteers with their twitchy marionettes. The contortionists who can fold like leather straps. The fire dancers who risk catching their own eyebrows on fire to earn 2 copper coins form a grinning nobleman's child. You catch the scent of lamp oil and sweat as a crowd begins to form around a shrill whistling noise. There at the center is a man on stilts. His legs are absurdly long, swaying as he leans toward a woman holding a piglet. She giggles, and you realize that's part of the act. Get the audience laughing, even if it means poking fun at your own gangly form. He winks at the crowd and tosses a cloth ball higher than seems safe and catches it again to thunderous applause. But what you're not seeing, not unless you really look, is the calculation behind it all. That stilt walker. His name's probably something like Grub or Jaspin, and he's not just here for laughs. He's memorized which merchant might drop a coin into his hat, which town guard to avoid, and where the friar's assistant leaves unattended meat pies. Every move is part performance, part survival. A juggler passes by, sweat running in rivulets down his sun-browned neck. His hands are a blur, apples, daggers, and a clay cup circle through the air. The onlookers cheer louder with each risky catch. You'd think it's all fun, but you notice something strange. He never looks directly at the crowd. He glances side to side constantly like he's searching for someone or watching out for someone. That's when it dawns on you, many of these performers aren't just entertainers. They're informants, runners, sometimes even thieves. You find yourself near a puppet booth now, where a curtain flaps lazily in the wind. The puppets are grotesque, exaggerated noses, gaping mouths, eyes too big for their carved faces. But the children watching are wide-eyed with joy. The puppeteer's voice shifts effortlessly between characters, from a shrill old hag to a booming knight to a wheedling merchant. And behind the booth, his wife is taking notes, not of the script, but of the crowd. She's watching who's wearing fine gloves, who just pulled a coin purse from under their cloak, who looks distracted. Later tonight, taut information might end up in the hands of a pickpocket ring, or maybe the local bailiff. Depends on who pays better. You wander on the soft flicker of torches lighting the way. In a small side alley, you spot a woman doing something strange, pulling lengths of colorful cloth from her mouth like a magician. A few children squeal with delight, and she makes a dramatic bow, the cloth puddling around her feet. But then she looks straight at you. Her eyes are sharp, calculating, and she smiles not kindly, but knowingly. As if to say, you think you understand what's happening here, don't you? She's a wandering trickster, maybe even trained in Romani sleight of hand, or Moorish shadow play. And in that split second, you wonder how many stories are folded inside her shawl. Some performers tell tales for copper. Some tell them to survive. Some to manipulate. And some because they truly believe in the magic of it all. You make your way through the square, past a group of dancers stomping in a circle to the rhythm of a handheld drum. One man twirls and claps teeth white in the firelight. You notice his left foot is bound with strips of fabric, no shoe. Probably a splinter, maybe a swollen blister that never healed. There's no rest for street performers. If you don't perform, you don't eat. And hunger makes for poor choreography. Still, there's a rhythm to it all. A strange poetry, even in the filth. These performers aren't background noise. They are the pulse of the city. They know more about its gossip politics and dangers than the mayor's scribe or the bishop's secretary. And unlike the nobles, they can move through it all unseen. You find yourself leaning against a wooden post, listening to a storyteller whose voice seems to drip with honey and sarcasm in equal measure. He's spinning a tale about a knight who loses his armor to a clever goat. The crowd chuckles, but he's really mocking the local baron, and everyone knows it. You glance around. Are there guards nearby? No one dares interrupt him. That's part of the game. He walks the line between satire and sedition with every word. As the bells of the town clock begin to chime midnight, the performances dwindle. Torches are snuffed out. Jesters pack up their props. But the stories, they linger. You feel them clinging to your boots, caulked in your clothes, whispering under your skin. And just as you're about to leave the square, you feel something slip into your pocket. You spin around, too late. Whoever it was is gone. A street performer, a child apprentice, or just a reminder that in this world everyone's performing one way or another. But you're not going anywhere just yet. You've only scratched the surface. The alleys still breathe, and behind every carved mask is a secret life you're about to uncover. You're still in the square, but the crowd has thinned now. The scent of roasted meat is fading, replaced by the musky mix of horses' smoke and damp wool. The moon has risen, hanging heavy and pale over the slanted rooftops. Most townsfolk are retreating indoors, shutters closing with soft thuds. But not you. You slip deeper into the twilight veins of the town, following the subtle trail of laughter, clapping, and the occasional jingle of coin. That's where the real stories are hiding, not on the main roads, but tucked into corners where the cobblestones are uneven and the torches burn low. A narrow passage leads you to a courtyard, enclosed by leaning buildings that seem held together more by habit than by mortar. And here, in this hidden pocket of the city, a second wave of performers are just setting up. They're different from the ones in the marketplace. Not as polished, not as loud. These are the after-dark entertainers, those who specialize in the uncanny, the forbidden, or the outright strange. There's a man with soot-darkened fingers drawing chalk symbols on the ground. A small group has gathered, whispering nervously, as he begins a routine not with a bow, but with a question. What lies beneath your soul when your shadows cast no longer follows? You don't know whether he's a philosopher or a con man, but the room quiets as he begins to spin a tale involving demon pacts, a cowardly duke, and a mirror that shows your crimes. The children are gone now. This show is for adults. And even the adults clutch their cloaks tighter. Just beside him, a young girl begins to play a haunting melody on a hurdy-gurdy, her head swaying like she's in a trance. She's barefoot, her dress torn at the hem, and she never speaks a word. She might be mute or pretending, but the sound she creates, it's spellbinding. Some coins drop into her hat, and you see a woman step forward, not to give money, but to press her palm to the girl's shoulder. The girl flinches. That's when you notice the tiny tattoo behind her ear, a crescent moon. You don't know what it means yet, but you will. A few steps away, two men begin a mock sword fight. One's tall and theatrical, the other stocky and prone to slipping on purpose. It's clear they've done this 1,000 times, but their chemistry is sharp as flint. The taller one delivers a monologue mid-duel praising the virtues of cheese and condemning taxes in equal measure. The stockier man tumbles dramatically into a pile of crates, sending a rat scampering. The crowd howls. You chuckle too until you realize. One of the onlookers just handed something not to a hat, but to a gloved hand hidden in a coat sleeve. Tot wasn't a tip. That was a message. Not all performances are for entertainment. Some are covers, codes, smokescreens. A cloaked figure emerges from the shadows, and instantly the entire courtyard stills. You feel it ripple through the space like an invisible thread pulled taut. No one claps. No one speaks. The figure steps into the torchlight, and you see a mask half golden, half soot black, with one teardrop carved under the eye. No mouth. They raise a hand slowly and begin to move, not dancing, not miming something in between. Every gesture is deliberate. A hand over the heart, a twist at the wrist, a turn of the head that seems to say, both follow me and don't dare. No one speaks during the performance. It feels sacred or dangerous. Maybe both. And when it ends, there's no applause, just silence. The masked figure vanishes into the dark like smoke in a bellows gust. You find yourself exhaling only then, as if you'd been holding your breath the entire time. A lean, older man slides up beside you. His tunic is patched but neat. He smells of cloves and tobacco. First time seeing the unseen, he asks, not looking at you. You nod. They don't talk. Haven't in 20 years. Not since they lost someone in the fire at the South Quarter. He lights a long-stemmed pipe, its smoke curling toward the moon. But their silence speaks louder than any ballad, doesn't it? You ask if all the performers here are locals. He laughs, soft and low. Some are born to it. Others run to it. And a few, they're exiled into it. Before you can ask more, he nods toward a dimly lit corner where a small child is balancing on a barrel, not performing, just practicing. Her arms are out wobbling as she tries to walk the rim. She's no more than 7. A woman, probably her mother, watches from the shadows, worry plain in her posture. This isn't play. It's apprenticeship. She's learning the only trade they can afford. You crouch to watch as the child stumbles, catches herself, and grins. She has a gap-toothed smile, one sock and no shoes. A tiny bell sewn to her sleeve jingles when she moves. The sound is faint, but it rings like hope. And suddenly, you understand something about this world. No one is here by accident. Every performer, every juggler, singer, and acrobat is here because this is their only stage, their only shield, their only home. Further down the alley, you hear a different sort of noise. Laughter, sure, but rowdier. The kind that's soaked in ale and stirred with bets. You head taut way and find a makeshift circle where dice are being tossed and dares shouted. But in the center is a man standing on his head reciting parts of the Magna Carta backward while juggling 3 turnips. It's both impressive and slightly horrifying. He finishes with a flourish, landing upright with a grin that's missing at least 3 teeth. Someone tosses a few coins at his feet, and another tosses a cabbage. He bows anyway. Everything is accepted. Everything has value in this world. You're offered a drink from a clay jug and politely decline. The man shrugs. Suit yourself, but you'll dream louder without it. You're not sure what that means, but you tuck the phrase into your memory. It sounds like something you'll need later. And as the night stretches on, you realize there's no real end to the performances. They fold into each other like the songs of birds at dawn. One stops, another begins. Someone coughs, and it becomes percussion. Someone laughs, and it becomes harmony. You're not in an audience anymore. You're inside the performance now. And the only way forward is deeper in. You keep walking your footsteps barely louder than the hush of the night. The city feels different now, not like a collection of buildings, but like a living, breathing thing. Its alleys pulse with half-whispered songs. Its windows flicker with shadows that might be candlelight, or might be something else entirely. The world of street performers doesn't end when the audience goes home. In fact, that's when the real theater begins, and now you're no longer just a watcher. You've crossed some invisible line. A small doorway looms ahead, half hidden behind a collapsed cart, and 2 sacks of barley that smell faintly of mildew. A wooden plank nailed above the arch reads in faded paint, "The Drunken Fox." It isn't an inn. Not really. It's a performance den. A hideaway for those who blur the line between performance and mischief. You duck inside the door, creaking on a hinge that's clearly been replaced more times than the roof. Inside the room is low-ceilinged, smoky and warm. Lanterns hang thick ropes, and their glow softens every edge. The walls are covered in sketches, caricatures, mostly drawn in charcoal or burnt stick ends. One shows a bishop with donkey ears, another a nobleman mid-fall into a chamber pot. The humor is crass, biting, and sharp. Satire as survival. At the center of the room is a small platform barely raised above the floor. A woman stands on it now, dressed not in silks or jewels, but in a patched leather coat and ragged boots. Her voice is coarse, but her words flow like honey turned to fire. She's reciting something between a poem and a confession, calling out hypocrites and mourners, lovers and liars, all while strumming a lute with 3 missing strings. The room is silent, but for her voice and the soft clang of someone stirring a pot in the back. You sit down at a wobbly bench, and an older man slides a cup toward you, thick clay chipped at the rim. You raise an eyebrow. He just smiles. It's ginger root and burnt apple peel. Clears the ears. Helps you hear the real performance. You take a sip. It tastes like someone tried to boil a tree and then changed their mind halfway through. But it does make your head feel strangely light. And soon you notice things differently. The rhythm of boots under the table becomes percussion. The flickering lantern above adds a strobe to the woman's voice. Her words slip beneath your skin like wind curling under a cloak. When she finishes, there's no applause. Instead, each person at the table lifts a finger silently. You do too, unsure why. The old man leans in again. It means, I heard you and I carry it with me. Not everything deserves a clap. Another performer takes the stage, a boy no older than 12 with chalk-white makeup covering his face and a cracked flute in hand. He doesn't speak. He plays, a single note over and over, bending it, stretching it, until it sounds like a cry, then a laugh, then silence again. His fingers dance on the instrument like they're possessed, and before long you feel it in your bones. Not joy, not sorrow, something stranger, something taut hovers just beyond language. After his set, he disappears through a curtain, and you're left staring at the spot where he stood, feeling like something was taken from you, though you couldn't name what. The drunken fox hums with quiet energy. Around you, performers trade secrets like bakers share yeast. One woman reveals a knot that can hide coins in a child's shoe without a single bulge. Another describes how to disguise a scar with soot and spit. Someone else boasts about getting past 3 city gates in one day by switching dialects mid-sentence. It's not arrogance. It's pride. The kind that comes from mastering a craft when the craft itself is barely legal. You catch a phrase again and again, the guild doesn't see us. You ask someone about it, a wiry man with ink-stained fingers and a tiny bell pinned to his lapel. He scoffs. The guild, they care about official performances, licensed, taxed, and tamed. What we do, it's breathing. They'd call it begging if they could tax it. You nod slowly. Street performers aren't just outside the law. They're beneath it, forgotten by it, and sometimes hunted by it. The conversation shifts. Someone mentions a place called the Alley of Echoes. A woman at the far end of the room flinches. Everyone quiets. You don't understand why, but her eyes meet yours, and suddenly the noise around you fades. She stands, moves closer. She's tall bones, sharp under skin, her braid long enough to tie around her waist. Her voice is barely above a whisper. You're new and you listen, so I'll tell you this: never walk the Alley of Echoes alone. Not after midnight. It remembers what it hears, and it never forgets. You want to ask what she means, but she's already turned away, disappearing behind a curtain, the color of dried blood. The fire crackles low now. The night is deeper and the air feels heavy. You step outside for breath and find the city coated in mist. It clings to your clothes, your eyelashes. Somewhere in the distance, a slow drum beat begins. Not a real drum. It's the thud of footsteps on wood, of boots on crates, crates of heels on old stone. You follow the sound. Down a twisted lane, you stumble upon a rooftop gathering. Somehow people are dancing on slanted, uneven shingles silhouetted by moonlight. Their shadows leap across walls like creatures from a dream. One man twirls a flaming hoop. Another somersaults dangerously close to a chimney. No nets, no ropes, no fear. You crane your neck to look closer, but one performer catches your eye and grins. With a flick of their wrist, they toss something down to you. A small card fluttering like a moth. You catch it. It simply reads, "The performance never ends. It only changes shape." You tuck it into your sleeve, because something tells you this isn't just a show anymore. It's a world, and you've been welcomed in. The rooftops fade behind you, their dancers swallowed by fog and night. But that card still burns in your pocket like a secret. The performance never ends. It only changes shape. You feel it pulse with a quiet urgency, like the echo of footsteps long gone but still remembered. You don't know where you're going, so. You just follow the rhythm of the city itself, letting your boots choose the path, and your instincts keep time. The air cools as you descend into a lower part of town, where the stone underfoot grows slick and mossy, and the alley walls lean in close like nosy neighbors. The architecture here is older, sagging with memory. You pass a row of shuttered stalls, their faded canopies fluttering softly, though there's no breeze. And then you see it, a carved archway flanked by statues that have been weathered so badly, they're more suggestion than figure. Above the entrance, a chiseled inscription barely clings to legibility, "We who speak without voice." You step through the arch, and it's like slipping into another layer of reality. Everything muffles the sound of your feet, your breath, even the distant murmur of the waking city. This isn't just an alley. It's a tunnel through the invisible history of performers who were never written about in scrolls or celebrated in court. This is the place for mimes, for mask makers, for shadow dancers whose craft was always silence. The Alley of Echoes. You remember the woman's warning, "Never come here after midnight." You glance up. You're not sure what time it is, but the silence feels like a held breath. A single cough would shatter it. As you move forward, shapes begin to appear. Not people, statues. Dozens of them. Human-sized, placed at irregular intervals along the narrow passage. Some frozen in poses of laughter. Some in anguish. Some in pantomime mid-performance. You lean closer to one and notice its hands are real. Not stone, wrapped in linen, trembling ever so slightly. You step back. They're not statues. They're performers, standing perfectly still, holding their poses, some for minutes, others perhaps for hours. This is their craft, to vanish in plain sight, to become part of the architecture. An illusion so complete even time itself forgets they're human. You walk through slowly, your footsteps sounding louder now. One of the still figures turns their head just an inch and winks. You blink. When you look again, they haven't moved at all. At the center of the alley is a circle formed by stones laid centuries ago, worn smooth by performers' feet. There's a man in the middle of it, drawing strange symbols into the dust with the toe of his boot. He's covered head to toe in soot, even his eyelids darkened, like he's made of shadow. His voice is gravel when he speaks. You hear them, he asks. You pause. Hear what he gestures upward. The ones who performed before us. The alley keeps their echoes, their breath, their jokes, their heartbreak. You just have to know how to listen. He begins to move not a dance exactly, but a sequence of shifts and gestures, like he's unlocking a language no one else speaks anymore. You realize this is his act, a kind of body riddle. He's telling a story about a jester who betrayed a king, a queen who vanished into the arms of a lute player, a sword swallower who swallowed a lie and choked on it. You don't understand every detail, but you feel the truth of it in your bones. As he finishes, he presses something into your palm. It's cold. You look down. A coin, but not one used in any market. It's carved from bone, not metal, and bears a single word. Observe. No one applauds. They simply watch him retreat into the mist, disappearing into a doorway Tot didn't exist a moment ago. You tuck the coin away and continue through the alley where the silence feels almost holy now. The deeper you go, the more surreal it becomes. You pass a woman balanced upside down on a rope, her body as still as death. You spot a boy sitting cross-legged on a barrel painting his own face with soot and berry juice, each stroke deliberate ceremonial. Everywhere you turn, someone is transforming. That's when you notice the shadows moving in ways they shouldn't. Some stretch when no one walks by. Some flicker when the lanterns don't. You follow one of them, it dances across the wall like a marionette unbound by strings. It pulls you toward a passage nearly swallowed by ivy. You hesitate, then step inside. This part of the city is underground, part catacomb, part collapsed wine cellar. The walls are lined with old shelves where bottles once rested, but now serve as storage for masks, scrolls, and tiny wooden puppets with faded faces. You're in the archive now. The secret museum of performance arts, never sanctioned by the crown or the church. A figure approaches, carrying a lantern. She's cloaked, and her voice is soft, accented, shaped by a tongue that learned Latin and lost it again. These are the masks that saw truth, she says. Worn by those who could speak only when pretending to be someone else. She opens a drawer and reveals a cracked porcelain mask, the mouth sewn shut with copper wire. This one belonged to the silent mock. He mimed entire sermons during the plague when priests had fled. People said his performance healed more than their prayers. She shows you a pair of gloves dyed red with crushed beetle shells. These belonged to a dancer who performed blindfolded while fleeing from 4 provinces. Every step was prophecy. Her audience never knew she was leading them out of danger. You look around in awe. These aren't props. They're relics. Evidence of lives lived in performance, not for gold, but for survival, for protest, for love, for the sheer stubborn defiance of being seen in a world Tot refused to look. You ask how old this place is. She smiles, eyes reflecting candlelight. Older than kings, newer than memory. When you emerge again into the night, the alley is empty, but the echoes follow you. Each step you take feels accompanied by laughter that isn't yours, by a lyric you never learned, and you realize you've been changed. Not entirely, but enough. Your gait is different, your breath slower. You're more aware now of how even silence can perform. And somewhere behind you, a new statue takes its place, arms outstretched, eyes closed, lips curved in a half smile that says, "The performance continues." You don't remember how you found your way back to the upper streets. The city above seems impossibly far removed from the world you just stepped out of. The sky is paler now, light brushing the rooftops, and you can hear the distant clatter of milk carts, roosters crowing, and sleepy merchants unlocking their stalls. But you're not done. Not yet. You still feel it in your veins, that slow, hypnotic rhythm of the underground. The bone coin in your pocket feels heavier. The silence of the alley of echoes clings to your shoulders like a cloak you didn't ask for but can't remove. You wander for a while, letting your body guide you again. Past bakeries where chimney smoke curls lazily into the dawn. Past guards half-heartedly patrolling the square. All bleary eyes past fountains still frozen at their rims. Eventually, you reach the river. It snakes along the edge of the city like a silver ribbon, beautiful but deceptive. The banks are crowded with boats, some docked for trade, others for shelter. But you're drawn to a rickety stage built right at the water's edge. It leans slightly to one side and looks like it might collapse if a bird landed on it, but it's been there forever. And the performers who use it, they call themselves the Current, a troupe without a leader, without a script, and without fear. You settle on a stack of rope coils, your hands resting on your knees, as the first performer steps out. He's soaking wet. You blink startled, but no one else seems surprised. His clothes drip onto the boards as he opens his mouth and begins to speak not in words, but in sound. Something between a gurgle and a whisper. It's the river, you realize. He's mimicking it. His body sways like the tide, and as he moves, others join him, some playing makeshift instruments, hollow gourds, stretched leather broken flutes, taut rasp like birds. The performance tells no story, not exactly. It just flows, like grief or memory. It reminds you of mourning someone you never met. It pulls at you soft and strange, and when it ends, no one claps. They just nod as though agreeing with something no one said out loud. You close your eyes, and that's when you feel her. The air shifts beside you. Someone sits on the ropes next to you, and when you glance over, there she is. Not a performer, at least not right now, but you can tell instantly. She's wearing boots worn nearly through a tunic, dyed in patterns you've never seen, and a smile that looks more like a question than a greeting. You've seen the alley, she says, not asking. Now you should see the wires. You blink. The wires. She stands motioning for you to follow. The ones who never touch the ground. You'll love them or fear them, sometimes both. You follow her. Of course you do. She leads you across a narrow bridge and down a staircase hidden behind an old chapel. You pass through a doorway barely wider than your shoulders, and suddenly you're in a courtyard surrounded by broken buildings, abandoned towers, half-fallen walls, everything held together by ivy, rusted nails, and luck. But strung between them are ropes, tight ropes, slack lines, silken cords tied to chimney pots and ancient gargoyles. You hear a whistle above. You look up, and there, dancing through the air with all the grace of leaves caught in a breeze, are the wire performers. Some walk as if on solid stone feet, precise and still. Others tumble and twist, clinging with knees and elbows, their movements too fluid to track. One woman dressed in white spins upside down and lets her long braid trail like a painter's brush across the sky. You can't breathe. They're flying. Used to be messengers, the girl beside Yuo says. Before pigeons. Before couriers. These people delivered secrets across rooftops. Wires were faster than horses. And quieter. You watch as two of them leap from rope to rope, impossibly timed a moment's hesitation from death, and then catch each other mid-air in a silent embrace. It's not a stunt. It's poetry written on the sky with muscle and memory. A child claps from a window nearby, and a performer bows low while still balancing on the wire. You laugh, stunned. How do they do that? They forget the ground exists, she answers. Later you're invited up, not to walk the wire, no, not yet, but to see their world from above. A narrow staircase spirals into one of the ruined towers. And soon you're looking down at the entire city. The square, the river, the places you've already been. And something else, thin wires, stretch across rooftops, alleys, chimneys, all invisible from below. A secret map etched into the sky. They call it the weave, the girl says beside you. Every city has one. If you know how to look, you ask if everyone's allowed to walk it. She shakes her head. Only those who've lost something, or those who are running, or both. She doesn't explain further. As the sun begins to rise, fully casting gold over the rooftops and making the wires shimmer like threads of fire, you feel something shift in you. Not a performance, not a trick. A quiet knowing. These performers, whether on the street, in the alleys, on the riverbank, or skyward on the wire, they're not just artists. They're keepers of the in-between. They belong to the cracks, the thresholds, the forgotten places where stories get born because no one else is watching. You descend from the tower slowly, the world feeling heavier beneath your feet. The girl is gone like she was never there. But in your pocket, taut bone coin presses warm against your thigh. Observe it said. And you do. Because once you've seen the weave, you start noticing how everything, every shadow, every whisper, every crooked smile might just be part of the performance. And you're no longer just in the audience. You're part of the act now. By the time your boots find the main streets again, the city has changed clothes. Morning has stretched itself across the rooftops, brushing them with soft light and pulling fresh smells into the air. Bread-baking horses, sweating fish being gutted too close to someone's window. But you're not the same person who stepped onto those cobbles last night. You move differently now, like you know there are layers to the world. Like you expect something extraordinary to be hiding behind every shutter. And you're not wrong. You head toward Tay Cloth District, where dyed fabrics hang like banners between buildings, waving gently in the wind. You expect merchants and spinsters, tailors and lace sellers. And yes, they're there. But you also notice something more subtle. A pair of women moving in unison as they carry a basket, arms swinging, footsteps matching. It seems too perfect. too practiced. You stop to watch them, and sure enough, when they pass a stall selling ribbons, they turn in perfect time and begin to sing under their breath. It's not a song anyone recognizes, but it syncs with the rhythm of the market, the hammering of the cobbler, the chatter of gossip, the flap of awnings. The whole place begins to feel choreographed. Not obviously, not theatrically, but precisely, purposefully. And just then, a man leaps from a low balcony, lands in a spin, and slides 2 apples off a table without breaking eye contact with the vendor who winks but says nothing. It's a performance and a transaction, maybe even a heist. You're not sure. And that's the point. This part of town belongs to the seamless, a collective of performers who've trained their bodies to melt into everyday life. Their dances don't need a stage. Their movements don't require applause. They slip into public spaces, turn them into theater, and leave before anyone even realizes they've watched something worth remembering. You follow the invisible current of their routine deeper into the district, past a narrow lane of embroiderers, past the open back door of a candle maker's shop where someone is balancing cups on their head while pouring wax. You enter a square just as a dozen people sit down on a long stone bench in a cascading wave of motion, their elbows barely brushing their shoulders aligned. A man walks by whistling a 4-note tune, and each of them taps a knee one after the other in time. You can't help but grin. They don't need an audience, they are the audience, and the performers, and the orchestra. A girl bumps into you deliberately, it seems, and slips something into your palm before scampering off. You unfold the paper. A symbol. 2 interlocking spirals and 1 word fold. You pocket it. Around the corner you stumble upon a courtyard where silks hang from balconies like a giant spider web. A performer in a soft pink tunic is climbing one, twirling herself in the fabric until she's a cocoon dangling in midair. She slowly begins to unfurl, spinning gently, as petals form her sleeves. Below, people watch from their windows or lean out of shops. No one claps, but everyone is watching. A vendor hands you a roasted fig on a stick and says, "She fell once, you know, from 3 stories up. Didn't move for a day. Then she got up and climbed again. Said the fall was part of the show." You ask if she's mad. The vendor shrugs. "Aren't we all, but she knows something. They all do. And now so do you." You make your way toward a low archway where the crowd seems to thin and the performers grow stranger. Here the acts don't look like acts at all. A man trims roses with absurd precision, each snip timed to the tolling of the bells. A woman knits nothing. Her fingers loop invisible yarn into patterns only she can see. A boy throws stones in a puddle and watches the ripples like he's reading a prophecy. You sit beside him. He doesn't look at you, but says, "You're folding, aren't you?" You ask what that means. He tosses another stone. It's what happens when you stop trying to see the trick and start becoming part of it. First you fold your gaze, then your breath, then your steps. Soon you're no longer walking through the city. You're inside its script. You glance down at the puddle. The ripples spiral out and fade. You whisper, "What happens when I finish folding?" He stands up and walks away, leaving only the echo of his answer. You vanish. You sit still for a long moment. The thought should unsettle you, but it doesn't. Not really. Because you realize now this entire city is alive with performance. Not the loud kind, not the kind with fanfare, but the kind that speaks in glances, in footsteps, in tiny pauses timed to breath. And that's when it hits you. The performance never needed a stage. It needed witnesses. It needed believers. You remember the woman on the rooftop who said they'd once been messengers. You remember the man in the alley of echoes who said the walls listened. You remember the shadow dancers whose bodies told stories in silence. All of it, every act, every gesture, every sigh was building something. Not a show, a memory, a lineage. The seamless have a motto. You find it scratched into a lamppost just before you leave the district. Nothing is ordinary, only unnoticed. You read it twice. Then you walk on carrying every step like a verse in a poem only you understand now. And as you move away from the cloth district, you can feel it again, the city watching you. Not with suspicion, but with recognition. You're folding. You're becoming. And the next performance is waiting. The wind picks up as you leave the cloth district, tugging at your sleeves, rustling the edges of parchment signs, and making the shutters creak like tired bones. The sky has shifted once again now, a deep slate gray with patches of light breaking through, like a stage curtain slowly lifting. You follow the pull of something unseen, drawn not by noise or music, but by silence. Heavy, anticipatory silence. Soon the streets grow tighter, coiling around one another like vines. You pass a dog sleeping in a boot. A cat wearing a tiny jester's cap. You don't even question it. You're too deep now. Your sense of normal has been stretched, frayed, and retied into something stranger and better. At the end of one twisted lane stands a building unlike the others. It's not particularly tall or ornate. In fact, it looks rather plain, like a granary that forgot its purpose. But people are gathered outside, leaning on barrels, whispering, waiting. You join them, unsure what you're waiting for. There's no sign, no curtain. Just a black door with a brass keyhole and a faint chalk-drawn symbol above it, an open eye inside a teacup. Someone taps your shoulder. A boy, maybe 11, wearing an oversized vest and a single earring shaped like a spoon. "You here for the table?" he asks. You nod because what else would you be here for? He opens the door and the smell hits you first. Wood smoke, cinnamon, something faintly metallic. Then you're inside and it's not what you expect. It's a kitchen. A long wooden table stretches across the room, and around it sit people in mismatched clothes, all holding teacups. No one speaks. A woman pours something from a steaming kettle into each cup. Her eyes closed as she does. Her movements are slow, ritualistic, intentional. You take a seat. The boy with the spoon earring whispers beside you. It's a tasting, but not of tea. Before you can ask what he means, the woman opens her eyes and begins to speak, not to you, not even to the room, but to the air. Tonight's air. Tonight's flavor is remembrance, she says. Let it steep. Everyone lifts their cups. You follow. The liquid inside smells faintly of clove and something darker like ink. You sip, and suddenly your memories aren't your own. You're somewhere else. Someone else. You feel the cracked wood of a stage under your bare feet. Smell the sweat of an anxious crowd. Hear the muttered curses of a guildmaster backstage. You are a street performer. You are 10 years old and afraid. Your trick is simple: flip, backward, land in a bucket bow. But today the bucket's missing. You panic. You fall. The crowd laughs. But someone claps. One person claps. And you rise bruised but alive. And you understand the sacred truth: even failure is part of the act. You blink. You're back in the room. The tea is gone. The woman nods at you as if to say, yes, you tasted it too. Someone else weeps quietly into their cup. This is the table, a sacred space for the taste keepers, a secret order of street performers who preserve the emotional memory of the craft. They don't just juggle or dance. They archive feeling. They collect shame, pride, risk, sacrifice, and serve it warm in silence. The woman begins another pour. Next cup, jealousy. You hesitate. Do you drink again? Of course you do. This time your pulse races. You are on a small stage beside a more beautiful performer. Their voice is velvet, their fingers flawless on the lute. The audience adores them. No one notices you. You forget your lines. You trip. Your heart burns not with hatred but longing. You want to be seen, just once, just the same, and then it passes. You're back again. You understand now why this room exists. It's not about technique. It's about transmission, the invisible craft. The things no one can teach you on a rope or stage. The things you inherit through feeling. The third cup is poured. Tonight's final note: forgiveness. This time the tea is cool, soft, and when you drink it, you become someone who betrayed a troupe once. You stole their coins. You fled. Years passed. You returned. They welcomed you back. No questions. Only open arms and a silent invitation to dance again. When your eyes open, you're crying. The boy beside you offers you a handkerchief with a spoon embroidered on it. Told you, he says, and with that the table is cleared. No fanfare, no applause. Only bowed heads and a shared silence so thick you can taste it more than the tea. Outside, the sky has softened. The city exhales. You walk for a while, unsure of where to go next, but comforted by the certainty that the city will decide for you. And it does. A bell rings somewhere, not a church bell. A different tone, higher, mischievous. You follow it to a low platform near the butcher's quarter, where a figure in a checkered cloak and patchwork hat is drawing a circle on ground with a loaf of bread. The audience is 3 dogs, 1 old woman, and a donkey. The performer begins. He juggles a knife, a carrot, and a candle. He sings about a duke who turned into a sausage. He mimics the butcher's limp. He flatulates loudly, then apologizes to the donkey. And everyone, man, beast, and baker's ghost, laughs. It's ridiculous, pointless, perfect. And as you stand there, still tasting the echo of memory on your tongue, you realize this is just as sacred as the table, just as holy as the weave, just as profound as the alley of echoes. The sacred lives not in the skill, but in the offering. You chuckle softly, then clap once. The dogs bark in approval. and the performer bows wide and low, as if he's just finished a performance for the queen herself. You toss him a coin, the bone one. He catches it, winks, and disappears, because the performance never ends. It only changes shape. The sun has lifted fully now, casting long, slanted shadows. Taut stretch across the narrow streets like fading ribbons of night. You walk slowly, savoring every texture underfoot. The crunch of old straw, the occasional slick of fish scales, the warmth where sunlight kisses the stone. It's no longer just a city. It's a living stage, and you somehow have become part of its cast. You pass a bread seller humming a tune that you realize is the same one the rooftop dancer spun to. A dog limps across your path, trailing a bright red ribbon around its neck, the same color the girl wore in the Alley of Echoes. And on a bench just outside a butcher's stall, a man with a single spoon earring naps with a teacup balanced perfectly on his chest. You're beginning to see it now, the threads, the scenes, the roles. You are no longer just observing the secret lives of medieval street performers. You are weaving into them. And as you turn onto a quieter street, one you don't remember walking before you spot something curious. A curtain velvet deep blue nailed to two old door frames, billowing gently in the wind even though the air is still. There's a sign hanging beside it, crooked and barely legible: enter, boldly exit changed. So of course you step through. The curtain swallows you into darkness, and when your eyes adjust, you're standing inside the smallest theater you've ever seen. It's barely a room. A ring of stools surrounds a space no wider than a market stall. No stage, no ceiling, just sky above and shadows clinging to the stone walls. There's only one other person in the room, a man in a brown cloak with his back to you. When he turns around, he's wearing your face. Not exactly, but almost. He's made up to look like you. Same boots, same posture, even the same way your fingers twitch when you're unsure what to do next. He doesn't speak. He just begins to mimic you. The way you breathe, the way you tilt your head, the way you furrow your brow when you're trying to understand. And then he begins to perform your day. Every step, every word, every moment you thought no one saw. The hesitation before you spoke at the table. The awe in your eyes watching the wire walkers. The way you reached for your pocket every time you felt that bone coin shift. He even reenacts the exact way you blinked when the silent performer in the alley winked at you. It's flawless. It's horrifying. It's humbling. And when he finishes, he bows not mockingly, not with bravado, just a quiet, respectful bow. The curtain flutters behind you again, and before you can react, he slips past you and vanishes. You sit stunned in the middle of the tiny theater, because now you understand this wasn't for entertainment. This was a mirror, a performance meant to reveal what you've become. The performers here, they don't just act, they absorb, they watch, they mimic, they reflect, and sometimes they gift it back to you. Outside, the city is brighter. The streets are noisier. Life bustles again with carts creaking, chickens flapping, apprentices yelling about turnips. But you move through it differently, with a performer's eye, with a storyteller's ear. You find yourself at the edge of town now, where the cobblestones give way to dirt paths, and the buildings lean like tired men exhaling after a long day. A crowd is forming around a low wagon that's been turned into a puppet stage. You almost don't stop, but something in you knows you must. The puppets are simple, just cloth and painted wood. But the story they tell is anything but. It's your story, not in literal detail, but in spirit. A tale of a traveler who wandered too deep, saw too much, felt too many things, and began to change. Who folded himself into a town and couldn't unfold again. Who saw the magic that hides in plain sight, and instead of turning away, stepped forward. The puppets speak in rhymes and riddles, their voices scratchy and high. Children watch wide-eyed. An old man hums along. A woman clutches a shawl to her chest as if it's her heart. And when the story ends, the puppets bow, and so does the puppeteer. You realize you recognize them. It's the masked performer from the courtyard, the one with no mouth and a single teardrop carved into their mask. But this time they speak. Their voice is quiet, gentle, honest. The final performance, they say, is the one you take with you. They step down from the wagon and press something into your hand, a folded scrap of parchment. You wait until they've vanished again, because of course they do, before you open it. Inside are 7 words. Now it's your turn to perform quietly. You stare at the message, letting it sit with you, and then you begin walking again. This time, every step you take feels intentional. Every glance, every smile, every silence, each one becomes a scene, a gesture, a verse. And the people around you, they feel it too. You pass a vendor, and they nod without knowing why. You pass a child, and she begins to hum your rhythm. You pass a dog, and it follows you for 3 full blocks before curling up beneath a barrel satisfied, because the city has recognized you now. You're not just a guest anymore. You're one of them. A performer, a listener, a keeper of forgotten songs. The curtain has lifted, and the script is yours now. And even if no one ever claps, you'll keep performing anyway. You move through the waking city as though gliding through the hushed wings of a theater during a midnight rehearsal. You no longer flinch at oddities. You no longer question coincidences. Everything is charged now, every blink, every breath, every shifting shadow. The veil is thin, and you've already slipped beneath it. You pause near a fountain in a narrow plaza where pigeons strut like retired kings and coins gleam in the shallows. You sit at the edge, and within moments the plaza responds. A woman with a satchel of carrots begins humming. A chimney sweep pauses mid-step, balancing his brush like a sword. A baker's boy pirouettes once, flour drifting from his apron in a slow, magical arc. None of them acknowledge each other. None seem aware they're part of a spontaneous ballet. But you're learning to see it now, how the world rearranges itself around a single moment of stillness. How performers need no introduction, no permission, no ticket. They only need space, silence, witness. Just beyond the plaza, you hear the slow toll of a brass chime, not quite a bell. You follow it instinctively, weaving past sleepy vendors and scribes setting up folding tables. Eventually, you arrive at a place the mapmakers forgot, a narrow crevice between 2 buildings where paint peels like shed skin and ivy forms a curtain of green lace. Inside, a staircase spirals downward, not a grand one, but uneven, carved directly into the stone. At the bottom, a door stands open, and within it lies a room that smells of parchment sweat and secrets. This is the Ledger House. It isn't where performances happen, it's where they're remembered. The room is long, low-ceilinged and filled wall to wall with journals, stacked on shelves bundled in ropes pressed under stones. The scent of ink and beeswax curls around you like a fog. A single clerk tends the desk at the far end, head bowed in concentration, quill fluttering like a moth's wing across a page. When you approach, they don't look up. Name of performer, they ask. You hesitate. I don't know, you say softly. They smile without lifting their gaze. That's fine. Most don't. Describe your act. You think for a moment, then answer, I listen. I notice. I carry what others miss. They nod. Ah, a fold walker. Late blooming by the sound of it. The clerk dips a quill into ink and writes something onto a slim ribbon of parchment. Then they roll it tightly, slip it into a hollow reed, and place the reed into a copper slot built into the wall. You hear a faint click, then silence. You wait. And then high on the wall, a narrow drawer slowly opens. Inside, you find a book bound in bark cloth. The cover is plain, the spine unmarked. But when you open it, the first page bears your reflection sketched in charcoal. Not perfectly, not as you see yourself in mirrors, but as the city sees you now, folded, transformed, and humming with the quiet electricity of someone who's been initiated. You flip through the pages. They're filled with stories, some familiar, some strange. A puppeteer who mimed a revolution. A boy who sang a river into sleep. A wire walker who once balanced across the shoulders of a crowd during a lightning storm. It's a living archive, and now you're part of it. A soft voice speaks behind you. We don't write history. We remember it when the world forgets. You turn. It's a woman with rings on every finger, each one made of brass, wood, or bone. She walks with a limp, Nad smells faintly of sage. Every performer, she continues, leaves something behind. A gesture, a sigh, a shadow cast just a little too long. This is where those fragments go. She opens a nearby book and shows you a drawing, an alley you recognize instantly. The Alley of Echoes. On the opposite page is a note written in fine cursive, still standing, still listening. Then she closes the book, runs her fingers across its cover and whispers, "You're ready." You ask for what? She doesn't answer. She only points toward a new corridor, a tight passage lined with masks hanging from nails. Some are theatrical, some grotesque. One is carved from driftwood, another stitched from burlap. As you walk past them, they seem to whisper. You reach the end of the corridor and find another staircase, this one leading up. At the top, daylight blinds you briefly, and when your eyes adjust, you're somewhere entirely new. It's an open rooftop stage, rough boards, chipped stone edges, and 4 lanterns still glowing faintly, despite the sun. Beyond the ledge, the city stretches in every direction, roofs and steeples and smoke and sound all colliding in a chaotic symphony. You step onto the boards. You're alone. There's no audience, no script, just you and your memory. You recall every story you've heard, every glance shared, every fragment folded into your being. The girl on the barrel, the monk with the silent drum, the man who mimed you into stillness. You think of the coin, the card, the teacup, the rhythm of stones in a puddle, and you begin to move. No words, no music, just motion, slow at first, then faster, then slower again. You tell a story that doesn't need a name. You let your body speak for you, and the wind listens, the chimney sways, the pigeons pause. Somewhere far below, someone looks up and notices you. They don't know why, but they'll remember. You finish with a stillness so full it echoes. You step back from the edge, and just as you turn to leave, you spot a child waiting in the doorway, eyes wide, barefoot, and smiling. You nod once silently, because you know the performance never ends. It only changes hands. The child doesn't speak. They simply watch you with the kind of curiosity that doesn't need words, eyes open, posture still, as if afraid that moving too quickly might break the spell you've cast. You smile and nod, stepping past them down a different staircase now. This one is wooden, creaky, clearly patched over countless winters. It doesn't matter where it leads. You follow. At the bottom, the city has changed again. Not dramatically, no sudden fog or eerie silence, but subtly. The colors seem brighter. The clatter of carts and clinking of blacksmith tools have turned into a rhythm. You realize it's the same rhythm your feet tap out when you walk now. You've become part of the city's tempo, not just a visitor. The melody of movement. As you make your way through the lower quarters, a familiar scent draws you in oranges, mint old stone. You follow it to a narrow building wedged between a bakery and a tanner's stall. The door is open. Inside, there's a staircase spiraling downward once again. You take it without question. At the base, you find a vaulted hall lit with hundreds of floating candles. The flames don't flicker. They burn perfectly still, suspended above a floor painted in circular patterns that seem to shift as you walk. In the center of the room stands a long, slanted table, less of a stage, more of a canvas. Around it, performers paint not with brushes, but with movement. A woman glides her fingers through sand, creating temporary symbols, taut vanish as quickly as they form. A boy drags his sleeve through powdered chalk, leaving behind strokes of color that seem to hum softly. A man spins on his heel, kicking pigment into the air until it settles into delicate, accidental murals. This is the hall of gesture, where performances aren't seen, they're felt. A figure approaches you wrapped in loose robes stitched from at least 4 different garments. Their eyes are lined in black, not for beauty, but to draw attention to the act of seeing. Here we don't tell stories, they say. We leave imprints. They hand you a sash, tie it around your wrist, then walk across the floor. Say nothing. Think only of something you've never said aloud. You hesitate, then do as instructed. The floor is warmer than expected. The sash drags behind you, collecting chalk pigment and dust. When you reach the other side, you look back. And there it is, a soft, crooked, impossibly tender mark, a gesture made without intention now visible. The robed figure nods. You'll forget the image. but the movement will stay. You understand. You always do now. You leave the hall quietly, stepping into a sun-dappled square where acrobats hang from a wooden beam, slowly rotating their bodies, forming letters tut. No one reads, but everyone understands. You sit on the edge of a fountain and watch them. A girl sells dried petals from a cart nearby. She hands one to you without charge. The petal is paper-thin violet with gold ink swirling across its face. It reads, "Nothing performed is ever truly gone." You slip it into your pocket alongside the bone coin, the spoon-stamped handkerchief, and the parchment-marked fold. You've begun to collect your own archive now. Across the square, a group of children run in a circle chanting a rhyme that seems older than language. They stop, point at you, and say in unison, "Your turn." You smile and walk to them. "What's the game?" you ask. "We pretend," says one. "We listen," says another. "We copy everything you do," says a third. So you lift your hand. They lift theirs. You spin once. They spin. You sit. They sit. You fold your arms, look at the sky, and hum a single note. They do the same. It's perfect. Unrehearsed. Transcendent. And when you stand and bow, they erupt in laughter, not applause, but something better, something lighter. They've become part of the story, and you've become part of theirs. You leave them dancing in the square, and soon find yourself in a small, dim-lit garden behind a crumbling chapel. A blindfolded woman is reciting riddles to a sleeping dog. A man with a broken lute strums one string again and again. A fire breather exhales silently, no flame, just the movement, the memory of fire. You sit beside them. No one speaks. The silence is its own act. And when you close your eyes, you see every step you've taken, replaying in sequence, not in perfect detail, but in gestures, rhythms, pauses. You can feel the wire beneath your feet, the hush of the ledger house, the steep descent into the alley of echoes, the taste of the table's tea, the circle of soot and chalk and breath. The silence deepens. Then a voice speaks beside you, low, warm, familiar. You're not watching anymore, they say. You're weaving. You turn, but no one's there. Just a flickering lantern. Just the hush of leaves. But you nod. Because they're right. You're right. You're no longer following the city's performance. You are part of its choreography now. Every pause you take becomes a cue. Every breath becomes a beat. And the story, it's not theirs anymore. It's yours. The garden fades behind you like a scene shifting sets between acts. As you walk, the city breathes with you, your steps syncing with the rustle of drying laundry above and the slow trickle of rainwater sliding through a cracked gutter. You've stopped looking for performers now. You've started noticing the performance in everything. The way a man sharpens a blade without looking. The way a woman carries a child balanced perfectly on her hip while weaving through a crowd. The rhythm of markets, the choreography of hands exchanging goods, the music hidden in murmurs and motion. It's all theater. And somehow you belong. You drift toward the outer walls of the city, where stone gives way to earth, where chickens peck near faded shrines, and the wind carries more scent of pine than ash. You spot a small caravan just outside the gate, 3 wagons painted in peeling colors arranged in a triangle. No signs, no banners, just a single rope stretched between them with laundry swaying gently in the breeze. It doesn't look like much, but you know better now. You approach. A man steps out of one wagon, older, barefoot, with a hat made from stitched scraps of velvet and fur. He smiles like he's been expecting you. "Careful now," he says. "You're close to the edge." You ask Edge of what he gestures toward the grass, of forgetting you were ever not a performer. He leads you toward the center of the caravan triangle, where a simple circle of stones has been laid. Around it sit others, faces smudged with soot knees, dusted with chalk hands, calloused eyes bright. No two look the same. Some wear cloaks, some wear feathers. One wears nothing but mud and a grin. They're not preparing for a performance. They are the performance. You sit among them. Someone begins to hum. Another taps 2 stones together. And without words, without signal, without planning, an entire scene unfolds. A silent reenactment of a wedding that never happened, of a storm that never arrived, of a secret told so quietly it had to be danced, not spoken. You watch, breath held, heart wide open. And when it ends, everyone exhales together. Not applause, just breath. The man with the velvet hat leans close again. "Every city has its circle," he whispers, "its final ring, its hush point. You've found ours. You don't leave from here. You return." He places something in your hand. A mask. It's simple. Half black, half white, with a thread of silver between. No expression. Blank. Waiting. You don't wear it to become someone else, he says. You wear it to show that you've already changed. He helps you stand. Everyone around the circle rises. One by one, they begin to walk outward into the world. Some disappear into the forest. Some back into the city. Some down into the marsh paths where fog curls like whispered tales. You put the mask on. The world blurs, not because of your eyes are covered, but because your sight has changed. You're not just watching anymore. You're seeing. You walk back into the city. And everywhere you go, people respond. Not with fear or surprise, but with knowing. A baker hands you a warm roll without asking. A child salutes you with a stick like a sword. A street dog follows you for 2 blocks, then breaks off with a yawn. You pass by a troupe of performers in the square mid-routine, and without missing a beat, they adjust their dance to include you. One gestures skyward. You mirror it. Another leaps. You catch the rhythm with a step. It flows. Seamlessly. You remove the mask and leave it balanced on the rim of the nearest fountain. You don't need it anymore. Because the change is complete. You make your way to the old cathedral steps. It's not a performance space, not officially, but the steps are wide and the view overlooks the heart of the city, the wires, the stalls, the distant rooftops where silhouettes still practice in secret. You sit and just watch, and now even stillness feels like a scene. You watch a boy steal an apple, then sneak it back 2 minutes later. You watch two lovers argue in rhythm, their hands punctuating every sharp word. You watch an old man trip and a stranger catch him mid-fall, then laugh like old friends. And you know, these aren't just coincidences. They're moments. And someone somewhere is watching you the same way. Not as a stranger, but as a performer in the world's quietest show. A girl sits beside you. She's young, barefoot, holding a hollow reed. "Are you the one who folded?" she asks. You nod. She places the reed on your lap and runs off. Inside it, a message carved so tiny it's nearly invisible. "We saw you. The city saw you. You are now the story." And just like that, you know what happens next. You'll walk again. You'll notice, you'll carry. And one day when someone else walks this path, eyes wide, heart open, unsure where they belong, you'll be waiting at a corner or in a square or behind a curtain of ivy, and you'll perform for them quietly so they can begin their folding, and the story will continue. You rise from the cathedral steps as if called by a silent cue. No applause, no music, no spotlight, just the morning sunlight bending around you like a curtain parting. The city hasn't changed, but your place within it has. Now every passerby might be a scene partner, every alleyway a rehearsal space, every silence a monologue in disguise. You stroll through the garden quarter next, where ivy wraps around columns and bees drone lazily in lavender thickets. This part of town always feels a little slower, a little softer, as if time forgets to tick here. But today you notice something new. The trees hum, not literally, but their leaves shiver at specific moments in time with footfalls that echo too clearly. A gardener sweeps in circles that mirror the motion of a dancer's skirt. A painter dabbling on a wall steps back at the same second a child's laughter rings out. You blink, and for a moment it all aligns, movement, sound, color, as if rehearsed 1,000 times. But it hasn't been. It's just that now you can see it. You're drawn to a courtyard at the heart of the garden quarter, ringed by fountains that trickle like whispered memories. In the center, an elderly man plays a harp, carved from driftwood and bone. The strings glimmer with dew. His fingers are stiff, but the notes he pulls out of the air are so pure, so clear. They might be the city's original language before words, before stone, before even fire. You sit near his feet. He doesn't look at you, doesn't stop playing. But he speaks voice, a rasp carried by the music. "You've walked the fold," he says, "heard the tea, seen the wire, felt the mask." You nod. He nods too. Now it's time to give it away. He stops playing. The silence that follows is warm like breath against your skin. He opens a satchel beside him and pulls out a tiny puppet no bigger than your palm, carved from olive wood eyes, painted on with startling gentleness. "You'll need this," he says, handing it to you. "It listens when you forget how." You take it. There's a string looped around its back as if waiting for your finger. The harpist returns to his music without another word, and you leave puppet in your pocket, unsure whether it's meant for performance or remembrance. But it doesn't matter. It will tell you when the time comes. As you turn the next corner, you find a procession moving silently down the street. Not a parade. Something gentler, stranger. Each person wears something red, a scarf, a patch, a thread. None of them speak. They walk slowly, deliberately, with eyes lowered and palms open. You ask a bystander what this is. He whispers, "It's the walk of letting." The old troops do it once a year. Let go of things they can't carry into the next season. Old roles, old regrets, unused stories. You join them. You don't know what you're letting go of. Not exactly. But as your steps fall into rhythm with theirs, you feel something loosen. The weight of every scene you tried to control. The ache of applause never heard. The fear that your silence meant nothing. You reach the river, the same one where the current performs. One by one, the procession tosses something into the water. A ribbon, a broken shoe, a page torn from a script. You pull the puppet from your pocket. You raise it to your lips. Whisper something you didn't realize was inside you. Then instead of tossing it in, you set it gently into the grass by the riverbank. It stays, watching, waiting. The procession ends, and the group dissolves like smoke. You walk alone again. But you don't feel alone. You feel hollowed, in the best way. Like a drum, like a stage, ready to be filled again. In the twilight, you arrive at a small roofless chapel near the edge of the city. Performers gather here at the end of every season. Not to rehearse, not to teach, just to sit. You find a place on the cool stone floor beside a contortionist who smells of lavender oil and bruises. A juggler sleeps nearby, 3 stones in her lap. A dog curls against your side without asking. No one speaks. And then slowly one voice begins to hum. A second joins. Then another. The sound is unremarkable. No harmonies, no crescendo. Just a held note, carried together, sustained by breath and presence and nothing else. You add your voice. The chapel has no roof, but above you the stars appear one by one as if summoned by your note. And when you finally fall silent, the air doesn't feel empty. It feels held. You stand. You walk. You descend into sleepwalking, now gliding between alley and echo, between gesture and meaning. You no longer question the rhythm. You are the rhythm. And as you pause beside a lamplighter finishing his final post, he looks at you and says without turning, "Keep it lit." You nod. Of course you will, because now you don't just belong to the city. You belong to its performance, and its performance belongs to you. By now, the city feels as if it's wrapping itself around you, not to trap, but to protect. Like a well-worn costume stitched with places you've walked, buttons shaped like the glances you've shared, and a collar heavy with the weight of stories not yet told. The seams stretch with your movement, and you realize you've grown into it. Or maybe it's grown to match you. The moon hovers high now, pale and round, casting silver across rooftops and rippling down the windows like spilled milk. You walk beneath it, your steps quiet and even. You don't need a destination anymore. The city always offers the next scene. You pass through a corridor of hanging lanterns, each one a different color, each one flickering at its own tempo. A boy follows behind you on stilts, not performing, just walking. Long shadows dance ahead, your shapes intertwining like threads in a loom. He whistles a single note. You hum it back. He keeps walking. You turn onto a street you've never seen before. Or maybe it's a street that's never seen you until now. It's narrow, winding, and lined with mirrors. Dozens, hundreds, tall ones, cracked ones, curved ones that make you thin or wide or small or tall. Some are framed in gold, others in ashwood. Some just nailed to the wall without ceremony. You pause before one. In it, you don't see yourself. You see the wire walker leaping across chimneys, the puppet spinning in her booth face, painted like tragedy, the masked figure bowing in a room with no ceiling, all the versions of performance you've watched folded into your reflection like paper creases. They shimmer for a moment, and then vanish. You continue walking until the mirrors end, and you arrive at a quiet courtyard surrounded by windows. Nothing grand, just still. In the center, there's a rope circle tight and unbroken. Inside it stands a girl with no audience. She's whispering. To no one. Or so it seems. You lean closer. Her whispers are the names of performers, hundreds of them. Some you remember, some you never met. One is your own. She pauses, then steps out of the rope and beckons you in. You obey. Once inside, you feel it like a tremor in your ribs. The rope circle. It's not a stage. It's a memory. Every performer who's ever stood here has left something behind. Fear. Hope. A final breath before a leap. It's sacred, but not in the way chapels are. Sacred in the way a heartbeat is small, constant, essential. You close your eyes, and you begin to speak, not in words you've planned, but in fragments that rise form the soles of your feet to the tip of your tongue. You speak of the alley that listened, the tea that taught you to forgive, the puppet who mimicked your memory, the street dogs who understood timing better than royalty, the laugh you shared with a shadow. And when you open your eyes, there's no crowd, just the girl. She nods once, then draws a chalk line from your foot to hers, connecting the circle. You're part of the thread now, she says, and she vanishes. You step out of the rope. The chalk line lingers. You notice a door has opened in the wall behind you. You enter. It's a room made of fabric. Walls of draped curtains in every shade imaginable. Indigo, blood red, moth wing, gray, candlelight, yellow. The floor is a quilt sewn from discarded costumes. The scent is spice sweat and dust. This is the cloakroom, where performers leave behind the roles they no longer need. You pass a tunic still dusted, perhaps from a baker who once danced. A mask broken at the jaw, its mouth frozen mid-sob. A sash embroidered with the names of 5 forgotten troops. And in the center, a pedestal with an empty coat. It's not lavish, just soft, lined with velvet, weightless as breath. You touch it. It fits. Of course it does. You shrug it on. It's not a costume. It's recognition. You turn. The curtains part before you as if on cue. Back in the street, a child is drawing in charcoal on the wall. She's sketching a figure-tall coat, billowing feet mid-step, head tilted as if listening. You. When she finishes, she writes one word beneath the figure witness. You thank her without speaking, and she vanishes into the dusk like a line from a poem that doesn't need a final rhyme. You keep walking. You pass the bakery where the girl with flour in her hair hands you a bun without looking. You pass the alley where a new performer is mimicking a passing merchant's limp. You pass a troupe on the steps rehearsing a story you recognize your own, but told in dance now wordless and wild. You smile. And for the first time since this began, you feel something settle deep inside you. Not an ending. A resting note. A beat before the next cue. You sit on the edge of a fountain and pull the mask from your pack. You hold it gently, set it on the water's surface. It floats for a moment, then sinks. You don't need it anymore. You are the role now, and the city is your stage. The sky bruises toward twilight again, softening into a lavender haze with streaks of peach along the horizon. Lanterns begin their slow awakening, one by one, flickering into life, like memories returning. Somewhere someone laughs. Somewhere else someone cries softly into the sleeve of a puppet. The city continues to unfold its endless performance, and now your place within it feels inevitable, as if you were always meant to be part of this strange, invisible orchestra. You walk with no destination, yet every step feels perfectly placed. You know the streets now not by name but by texture. The chalk-dusted cobbles of the performer's mile, the mossy curve near the river where jugglers train after dusk, the 3 cracked stones outside the ledger house. You know them by feel, by rhythm, by what lingers in the air after laughter or silence. You find yourself near the Bridge of Breath, a narrow footbridge built so unevenly that walking across it feels like navigating the shoulders of a sleeping giant. Below it, the river reflects the city's shifting moods, torchlight, shimmering like applause shadows, dancing like curtain calls. As you cross, you pause at the center. Something about this spot slows the heartbeat. Performers call it the hush place, a location where the world briefly forgets to turn. A small envelope rests on the rail, sealed with wax. You open it. Inside, one line written in curling ink. Somewhere someone is waiting for a story you haven't told yet. You tuck the paper into your coat. Past the bridge, you notice people gathered along the riverbank, not in rows, not organized, just there. Some sitting, some lying on their backs, one balancing on a half-submerged barrel, eyes closed, arms open. You join them. At the far edge of the water, a figure steps forward. She wears no mask, no costume. Her face is lined, her hair streaked silver, her eyes bright and unblinking. She says nothing. She simply holds out her hand. And from the dark, others emerge. Each holds a single object, a bell without a clapper, a lute with no strings, a jug with no handle, broken instruments, forgotten tools, but each held with reverence, not regret. One by one they step into the water, just ankle deep. They begin to move not with dance, not with purpose, but with presence. The kind of movement taught requires nothing but breath and belief. Their hands shape stories in air. Their bodies remember roles long lost to time. There is no plot, only feeling. A hush falls over the riverbank. Even the crickets go silent. You watch. And then you understand this isn't a performance for applause. It's a ritual, a farewell to something that never wanted fame, a celebration of having existed. The woman lowers her hand. The figures bow not toward the crowd, but toward the water. And just like that, they disappear into the mist. Not gone, just changed. You feel something shift inside your chest, a tightness loosening, a thread releasing. You're not here to be seen. You're here to see, to carry, to echo. Someone beside you whispers, "That was the Requiem troupe. They only perform for those who've crossed." You ask, "Crossed what?" They just smile. You'll know. You rise. Your feet lead you now to the outskirts again, where the city frays and the world grows quieter. You find a stone bench beneath a tree blooming with tiny white flowers. The petals fall around you like applause in slow motion. You sit, and that's when you hear it. A voice, familiar. The performance never ends. It only changes shape. You look around. No one. But the words are true. You know them now in your marrow. You reach into your pocket and find the bone coin again. You thought you left it behind. But it's here. You flip it. It lands upright on your palm, balanced impossibly. On one side, observe. On the other, begin. You smile, because now you understand. They were never separate commands. They were always the same. The last leg of your journey begins not with fanfare, but with stillness. A kind of silence taught feels earned, like the quiet after a final line is spoken, and the curtain begins to fall, but doesn't quite touch the floor. The city feels slower now. Not tired, but reflective, as though even the bricks and bells know something has come full circle. You rise from the bench beneath the white-flowered tree nad, step back into the winding streets. But this time you walk like someone who belongs. Not like a guest or even a performer, but like a thread in the tapestry itself. People pass you, and you know which ones are carrying scenes in their pockets. You see the signs now. The dancer disguised as a candle maker. The poet pretending to be a guard. The old woman who sweeps a perfect stage into the dust each morning, only to erase it by evening. You cross a familiar square where a juggler stands with empty hands, miming the weight of imaginary objects. A child nearby mimics him perfectly. Their eyes meet. The scene continues. No coins are exchanged. Nothing needs to be said. That's the nature of the craft now. It gives. It folds. It watches. It continues. As you move through Tay Old Quarter, you find a narrow shop with a faded sign above the door, the borrowed curtain. You step inside. It smells of wood smoke, lavender, and old fabric. Inside are rows of shelves not filled with costumes, but with moments. Bottled laughter, canned silence, folded sighs pressed flat like parchment. There's a pair of boots with soles worn smooth from pacing stages. A cloak woven from discarded curtain ties. A wooden box labeled unfinished bow. A small man behind the counter looks up and smiles. "You're not here to borrow, are you?" he asks. You shake your head. "You're here to return." You place something gently on the counter. You're not even sure what it is until your hand opens. It's a fragment of breath from that one scene, that moment. You know the one. He nods, wraps it in a swatch of fabric the color of dusk, and tucks it away. "Thank you for carrying it as far as you did," he says. You nod. Outside again, the streets look different, but only because you do. You follow the edge of the canal, now the water whispering beside you, like an old friend humming a lullaby. Boats drift past, silent and low. One of them is rowed by a figure in a red sash, one you recognize from the circle. They raise a hand. You do too. You reach the final hill just before the city gives way to the fields. At the top, there's a stone platform with nothing but sky and wind, and a stool, and a book. You sit. You open it. The pages are blank. Of course they are, because they're waiting for your version of everything you've seen. Not a retelling, not a history, but a transmission. You pick up the quill beside it, and just as your hand hovers above the first page, you hear footsteps behind you. Another traveler, eyes wide, folding still. You don't turn to greet them. You don't need to. You leave the book open. You rise and step away. Let them find it. Let them begin. Let the city perform for them now. Because you've done your part. You've seen what needed seeing. You've told what needed telling. You've danced, whispered, folded, watched, given. And now you rest. You make your way back to the very first square you crossed, where a stilt walker once winked and a juggler never looked at the crowd. They're not there now. Only a lantern left burning. You sit beside it. You close your eyes. You smile. The performance never ends. It only passes on. So here we are. The lights have dimmed. The stages are empty. The cobblestones cooled by night air. The city breathing gently in its sleep. You've walked far tonight, not just through alleyways and bridges and rooftops, but through echoes, stories, and silence. You've followed shadows that danced, sipped tea brewed from memory, balanced between rooftops, sat at the ledger of the forgotten. You've been part of a tale that never asks to be believed, only felt. And now it's time to return. Not to where you began, but to stillness. Let your breath slow. Feel the imaginary mask slip from your face, warm and worn from the performance. Feel your shoulders release the weight of wonder, giving way to something softer, peace perhaps, or quiet knowing. The bone coin, let it rest. The puppet, let it sleep. The echoes will carry themselves now. And you did beautifully. Tonight, your part in the story ends not with a final line, but with a bow the world doesn't see. But the city knows. The stage remembers. And somewhere someone folds your story into theirs and steps quietly into the next scene. So close your eyes. Let the curtains draw. and dream gently, performer. You've earned your rest.